Use my best salesmanship. No soap.
If I settle down with my family and wait for him to come.
While this movie was being filmed on military bases across California, the actual war was still happening. Clark Gable was flying combat missions over Germany. Jimmy Stewart was commanding bombing runs over Nazi territory. And John Wayne was in Chatsworth making a movie. Republic Pictures spent $1.5 million on it, more than they'd ever spent on anything. The Navy cooperated fully, let them film real servicemen, and cut the footage directly into the picture. Wayne plays a construction boss in the Pacific whose workers keep dying in Japanese attacks because the Navy won't let civilians carry weapons. After a massacre, the military finally creates the Naval Construction Battalions, the Seabees, and Wayne's character enlists with his men. The ending is one of only 7 times in Wayne's entire career that his character dies on screen. Japanese forces are advancing, no reinforcements are coming, so he loads a bulldozer with explosives and drives it into a fuel depot, takes himself out along with the enemy. In 1929, a director named Raoul Walsh was walking across a Fox studio lot when he noticed a kid hauling furniture. The kid was 23 years old, working as a prop boy, and his name was Marion Morrison. Walsh was in the middle of reading a biography about a Revolutionary War general called Mad Anthony Wayne, and for whatever reason he looked at this prop boy and thought, that's the name. The kid himself had no say in any of this. One day he was Marion Morrison moving chairs around, the next day he was John Wayne. Dark Command was only the second time Walsh and Wayne ever worked together, and by 1940, Wayne had finally broken out through Stagecoach. The prop boy was now a movie star. The film takes one of the ugliest moments of the Civil War and builds a story around it. In August 1863, a man named Quantrill led a raid on Lawrence, Kansas, and killed somewhere around 200 unarmed men and boys in 4 hours. One of the worst attacks on civilians the entire war produced. The movie fictionalizes Quantrill as a schoolteacher who loses an election to Wayne's character and can't handle it. He raises an army and burns the town. After the war ended, the Marine Corps was in serious trouble. The Army wanted to absorb it completely. Truman didn't like the Marines and supported breaking them up. The Secretary of Defense was pushing to fold their ground forces into the Army and give their aviation to the Air Force. The Corps was looking at institutional extinction. They needed the American public on their side, so they made a movie. The producer promised Republic Pictures a film that would make money while also serving as recruitment material. The Marines gave him everything. They approved the script. They provided 2,000 actual Marines as extras. They even opened up Camp Pendleton for location shooting. And they loaned him the real flag. The second flag that went up on Mount Suribachi, the one from the photograph that everyone knows, came out of the Marine Museum at Quantico and was used in the production. Wayne plays a sergeant named Stryker who trains his men so brutally that they despise him. He humiliates them, refuses to show any compassion, lets a wounded man die rather than give away their position. His squad hates everything about him. By Iwo Jima, all that brutal training is the reason they're still alive. The flag goes up on Suribachi. Stryker sits down and says he's never felt better. A sniper kills him a moment later. The film was a hit. The Marines got their propaganda. And a couple years later, during Korea, Congress passed a law that permanently established the Marine Corps as its own branch. The institution that was about to disappear is still here. MGM wanted John Ford to make a movie about patrol torpedo boats in the Philippines. Ford said no. He was the Navy captain at the time, on active duty, shooting documentaries in the Pacific while actual combat was happening around him. The studio kept asking. Ford kept refusing. Eventually, MGM just shelved the whole project because they couldn't get Ford to agree. 2 years went by. Then Ford was prepping for D-Day and ended up spending 5 days aboard a patrol boat commanded by John Bulkley, the real Medal of Honor recipient. 5 days on that boat with that man, and Ford changed his mind. The film is about a squadron of those little wooden boats trying to defend the Philippines right after Pearl Harbor. The Navy brass think the boats are toys, so they put them on mail runs while the Japanese are tearing through the Pacific. Robert Montgomery plays the Bulkley character. John Wayne plays his second in command. Over the course of the film, the boats get picked off one by one, the men die, and the survivors eventually get orders to evacuate and leave their remaining crews behind. That's the title. They were expendable. Ford gave away every dollar he made on the film, donated his whole salary to a fund for 168 Navy men who'd worked on his previous pictures. And then he wouldn't watch the finished movie, refused to look at it for 5 years. When he finally did sit down and see it, even he admitted it was good. The actual war kept happening while they were shooting this film. John Wayne plays an American colonel who stays behind after Bataan falls to organize resistance fighters. Anthony Quinn plays a Filipino officer whose girlfriend keeps showing up on Japanese radio, which makes everyone wonder whose side he's really on. They shot for 130 days, and about 2/3 of the way through, the real American invasion of the Philippines happened. Then the Cabanatuan raid happened, where American forces actually liberated a Japanese prisoners of war camp. The writers had to tear up what they had and incorporate real events into the screenplay while cameras were still rolling. When the film came out, it opened with actual newsreel footage of actual prisoners being freed. At the end, recently liberated prisoners showed up on screen and a narrator introduced them by name. Some critics thought that was ghoulish, using real suffering as part of the show, but the filmmakers did it anyway. This film required 3 directors, 4 cinematographers, and 12,000 extras, and it still nearly didn't get finished because the producer was drunk. It follows one family across 50 years of American expansion, from 1839 to 1889. They survive river pirates. They chase the gold rush. They fight in the Civil War. They watch the railroad get built. 5 chapters, 5 eras, one family dragged through all of it. They shot it in 3-strip Cinerama, a format so wide it needed 3 synchronized projectors just to display the image. The cast looked like someone went through the Hollywood phone book. Stewart, Fonda, Peck, Wayne, Reynolds. The budget started at $7 million, then it hit 15. Henry Hathaway described the production later. It was goddamn trouble. They had an idiot for a producer and Saul Siegel was drunk most of the time. We spent so much money on the picture they almost decided not to do the last part. The studio seriously considered cutting their losses and releasing an unfinished film rather than spend another dollar. But they pushed through. The movie made $50 million and played in Cinerama theaters for 3 straight years, won 3 Academy Awards, and then nobody ever shot another movie in 3-strip Cinerama again. Darryl Zanuck wanted to recreate D-Day, and he wasn't messing around. He got his hands on a book by Cornelius Ryan, who had spent 10 years interviewing over 700 survivors from both sides of the invasion. Zanuck hired 3 different directors. He got 23,000 actual soldiers from the U.S., Britain, and France to work as extras. The budget hit $10 million, which made it the most expensive black and white film ever produced. That record stood for 31 years until Schindler's List. John Wayne plays Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Vandervoort, and the story of how he got that role is something. Charlton Heston wanted that part badly. Heston was an actual war veteran, he'd served, and he went after the role of Vandervoort hard. But Wayne swooped in at the last minute and took it from him. And then Wayne made demands. Every other star in the film, and this was a massive ensemble cast, accepted $25,000. Wayne demanded $250,000, 10 times the rate. He did it specifically to punish Zanuck for something Zanuck had said publicly. After the Alamo flopped, Zanuck had referred to Wayne as "poor John Wayne" in an interview. Wayne remembered that. He made Zanuck pay for it, quite literally. Howard Hughes put his own money into this one. His name's in the opening credits, and then he handed the directing job to Nicholas Ray. Ray was about to become one of the most respected directors in Hollywood. Rebel Without a Cause, Johnny Guitar, that was all coming. But in 1951, Ray was a liberal with connections to the Roosevelt era, and the blacklist was destroying careers all around him. He needed to prove he was loyal. So when Hughes offered him a military propaganda film, Ray took it, even though he privately hated everything about the project. Wayne plays a Marine squadron commander during Guadalcanal. He's cold, he's rigid, he'll send pilots to die if the mission calls for it. Robert Ryan plays the guy who stays close to the men and thinks Wayne's approach is wrong. Over the course of the film, Ryan's character starts to see why Wayne operates the way he does, and then Ryan inherits command and has to make the same calls. Hughes managed to get actual combat footage from Korea cut into the film. The war was happening while they were in production. When the Joint Chiefs screened the finished movie, they called it the best service picture Hollywood had ever made. Nicholas Ray probably didn't frame that review. Wayne made his first war film in 1942. The war was on. Wayne wasn't in it. But the planes in his movie were about to be. Flying Tigers tells the story of the Real American Volunteer Group. They were U.S. pilots who volunteered to fight for China against Japan, technically before America even entered the war. In the movie, Wayne plays squadron leader Jim Gordon, a character based on the actual commander. Hollywood couldn't use military aircraft during wartime. Everything was needed overseas. So the studio went straight to a Curtiss Wright factory in Buffalo, where P-40 fighters were sitting on the runway waiting to ship out to the Army. The factory let them borrow the planes, repainted them for the cameras, and had their own test pilots fly them for the shoot. Then the planes went to war. All the aerial combat, the dogfights, the explosions, the train bridge sequence, that was miniatures. But the work looked so real that it got an Oscar nomination for special effects, and part of why it lost was because voters didn't realize they were looking at models. Wayne spent 15 years trying to make this film. It nearly bankrupted him. He got the idea in 1945 when the Second World War was ending. He wanted to make an epic about the 1836 siege, where a small group of Texans got wiped out by Santa Anna's army. For the next 15 years, he tried to get it financed. His original plan was to direct only and play a small role because he knew the production would be massive and he'd need to focus on running it. But United Artists wouldn't put up money unless Wayne starred, so he gave himself the Davy Crockett role, which he'd originally wanted Clark Gable for. Even with himself as the lead, he couldn't close the budget. So Wayne started mortgaging things, his houses, his cars, his boat. He put $1.5 million of his own money into the production. The Alamo opened and made $7 million against a $12 million budget. Wayne had to sell his share of the film back to United Artists just to stay solvent. The movie didn't turn a profit until 1971 when the TV rights finally sold. Wayne spent the entire 1960s grinding out westerns just to pay off his debts from this one film.